So impatient did I become for starting that I felt like 1,000 pins were pricking me in every part of my body, and started off a week in advance of my brothers. Frank P. Peake, Arkansas.
Lincoln immediately ordered states to send 75,000 men to serve as federal troops. Patriots rallied to the cause, but his call put 4 more states into the Southern Confederacy, and Jefferson Davis arranged to move the Confederate capital from Alabama to Richmond, Virginia. At its beginning, the aims of the war were simple. The Confederacy would fight for independence, the North to reestablish the Union. But young men enlisted for many different reasons. Some for conscience, some for adventure, some for honor.
If a fellow wants to go with a girl now, he had better enlist. The girls sing, "I am bound to be a soldier's wife or die an old maid." Private Theodore Upson, 100th Indiana.
I tell the boys right to their face, I'm in the war for the freedom of the slave. When they talk about saving the Union, I tell them that is Dutch to me. I'm for helping the slaves if the Union goes to smash. Chancy Cook, Wisconsin.
Men streamed in with an assortment of gaudy and impractical uniforms. The first wave came as 90-day volunteers, another as 3-year volunteers. They elected their first leaders from among themselves. Most had no military experience. Amateurs led amateurs. When they arrived at camps, generals who had never led such large groups were expected to put together troops from these undisciplined civilians. Neither North nor South was ready for war. Both sides looked for leaders among career soldiers, many of whom had studied together at West Point and other institutions. They were classmates and friends. Robert E. Lee was first choice for leading the Union Army, but when his home state of Virginia seceded, he accepted Jefferson Davis's request to lead the armies of the Confederacy. Abraham Lincoln would struggle with lesser generals for 3 years until he found a match for Lee in Ulysses S. Grant. Northern officers like William Tecumseh Sherman warned their Confederate friends that they were bound to fail. The North had 18 million people. The South had only 9 million. 1/3 of those were slaves. 90% of the country's manufacturing took place in the North. 2/3 of the nation's rail lines and most of the iron, coal, copper, and precious metals were there. Northern trade with Europe was strong. It had cash for war supplies. But the South had its own advantages. Southern soldiers knew what they were fighting for, to protect their homeland. And they knew the country they had to defend. Northerners had to invade and conquer unknown ground.